In this video, we'll explore some of the built-in functional interfaces provided by Java. There are a lot of them, but I don't want to overwhelm you, and I'll focus on the most important ones for now. The built-in functional interfaces are commonly used in functional programming. These signatures of functional interfaces help us achieve uniformity across different applications. On top of that, the built-in functional interfaces are designed to work seamlessly with Java's functional programming features, such as the Stream API, which you'll see very soon. Let's take a look at some of the most common built-in functional interfaces. First of all, we have supplier. A supplier represents a supplier of results with a single method tGet. I can remember this name since it's the supplier. It doesn't take any arguments, but it does give you something back. Please mind, these t's are the generics, so we need to specify the type when we create them. T could, for example, be a string, an integer, or a custom class, for example, student. Then we have the consumer. And consumer is going to have one method, accept. That's going to take one parameter as input, do something with it, and then return nothing. Then we have the predicate, which represents a Boolean valued function. So it's going to take one argument and then return a Boolean, which means true or false. The method is called test. This is used a lot for filtering, for example. And then we have the function, and function accepts one argument and produces a result. As you can see, this one has two generics. So the input and the output, the input t and the output r, they could be of different types. So for example, it could be that it accepts a string and then it returns perhaps the length of the string, which could be an int. Now let's see how to implement these functional interfaces without using lambda expressions first. And this is not because you would normally do this. I'm just doing it this way to help you understand the lambda expressions and the built-in functional interfaces better. So let's go ahead and make this implement the supplier. And I'm going to make this implement a supplier with the generic string. As you can see, I now need to import the Java util function supplier. So let's override the single method get. Since it's a supplier of type string, the t is now a string. So it's going to return a string, gets, and let's just return hello. So right now we have a supplier example. I can go ahead and create another class and instantiate this one. So in here, I'm going to create the main methods. I can create an instance of our supplier example. And on this supplier example, I could call the method get. So this is not how we would normally do this. Normally, we would do this with lambda expression. So for example, this. And please mind, I need to specify the generic here. And again, I need to implement the supplier. Let's call it S1. And then in here, I could do the exact same thing. It doesn't take any arguments. The arrow, and then return hello, like this. This would be the same thing that I'm doing here, but then with the lambda expression. Let me show you how to implement the consumer. So let's also make a consumer of type string. And consumer is going to be a bit different. I need to import it as well. I'm going to call it C1. It's going to consume, in this case, a string. And it's not going to do anything, so let's just go ahead and print this string. Like this. And I can go ahead and call the method accept. And then just say hello from consumer. And that's how to implement the consumer. Then we have the predicate. And predicate is going to return a true or a false. So let's just create a predicate string. And this one is going to determine whether the length of the string is smaller than 5. So if s.length is smaller than 5, it's going to return true. Otherwise, it's going to return false. So let's actually go ahead and print result, p1.test. Then when we say, hello, everybody, this is definitely going to be longer than 5, so it's going to print false there. And lastly, we have the function. Function takes two generics, so we need to specify two generics here. Let's have it accept a string and an integer, and call it f1. And by the way, do you see that I can use the same name for the lambda parameter? That's okay, just like I can have the same parameter name for multiple methods inside my class. That's all fine. I just cannot use local variables in the same scope as parameter names. Okay, so this is also going to take a string, and then it's going to return the length of the string as an integer. So in here, well, actually, let's print this too. f1 dot apply hello. So that's going to print 5. The reason it's printing it is because I wrapped it inside the system out print line. And I'm going to run this so you can see all the results. So we get hello from consumer, which is coming from line 16. Then we get false, which is the result for predicate. Hello everybody is not smaller than 5. And then we get 5, because that's the length of hello. And that's how we implemented these functions. So as you can see, the first time I did it, I was creating a special class, supplier example. But that's not how we normally do it. So since we understand lambdas probably well enough right now, we need to implement these functional interfaces with lambda expressions. So for comparison, this lambda expression over here, nothing becomes hello, is the equivalent of this method over here. Public string get return hello. It's a lot shorter, and it can determine what to implement because the supplier is a built-in functional interface. Here you can actually see the Java code for the supplier. I did this by doing command click on it. I think it's control click for Windows machines. And this supplier, as you can see, is returning t, which is whatever you specified, and the method name is get. Remember that methods and interfaces are always public by default, so it's a public method. It doesn't take any arguments, but returns whatever t is. So this is not common. It's way more common to do with lambda expressions. So here, no parameters, return a string, hello. Here, one parameter s, and it knows that this is of type string because the consumer is of type string. And if we look at the accept method in consumer, we can see that the t is of type t. So in this case, it's going to be a string. And we can just output that string. That's what we're doing here. Then we have the predicate, which is returning a boolean and taking something that we specified, which is also a string in here. And lastly, the function, which is taking a string as input and returning an integer. So we've seen how to implement these functional interfaces. In the next module, we'll use this to learn functional programming. And we'll explore functional programming concepts such as method references and the Stream API. But before we go there, please make sure that you're comfortable with writing lambda expressions and implementing these functional interfaces before you move on. Otherwise, you're definitely going to get stuck. So make sure to do the exercises, and once you're ready, I'll see you at the functional programming module.